Hello! Today on Knowing Nature, we're going to be taking inspiration from nature to protect our villagers, and we're going to be having a look inside a giant anthill. Now, before we get too deep into this anthill and this colony, we should probably first pay our respects to the Queen to make sure that her workers will let us explore around inside. So up here we've got the Queen. Hello, Your Highness. May we visit your colony? Yes? Yes, excellent. Thank you. So the Queen is, of course, a very important ant inside the colony because she's responsible for laying all of the eggs. And without her, the colony would die out really quickly because there'd be no baby ants to replace the old ones. Now the colony has many different workers and they've got different jobs, of course, just like villagers can take on different jobs. So here we've got this cleric villager and he's going to be feeding the Queen every so often. Because this Queen, she never goes outside of the colony. She's going to be here for basically the rest of her life. And so that means that she needs her workers in order to feed her and take care of her and to defend her. Now, it's nurse ants that take care of these eggs. They clean them, they keep them safe from predators, and they move them around to make sure that they stay at the right temperature. They'll move them into special nursery chambers. And then once the eggs hatch, they'll take care of the little larvae. So around the corner here is a brood chamber where these ants have been keeping their larvae to keep them safe. So once the eggs hatch, they come out as a little grub, a little larva, and they get fed by the nurse ants and protected and moved around to make sure they stay at the right temperature. And that's something that you can sometimes see ants doing. If you've got a flower pot or something, you turn it upside down near an anthill and it'll get nice and warm under there. And what ants might often do is they'll start to move in under that flower pot and they'll actually bring their larvae and their eggs up under there and they'll make a brood chamber under that pot because it's nice and warm and that helps their larvae and eggs to develop a little bit faster. If it gets too hot there, you'll start to see the ants pick up the eggs and larvae and they'll move them back down underground where it's a little bit cooler. So up here is another nursery chamber and this one is filled with pupae. Now this is the same stage of life as when a caterpillar goes into its cocoon before turning into the adult. So here the ant larvae, they turn into a pupa and they don't really move around too much. Sometimes they can wiggle and they are turning into the adult ant inside here. But they're still looked after by the nurse ants. So they'll come and they'll check on these pupa. They'll make sure they're the right temperature. They'll make sure there's nothing growing on them, no mold or anything like that, and clean them off every so often. Oh, this pupa is a bit different. Oh, now sometimes what happens is there are other insects that come and take advantage of all this care that ants take over their young. And what this one looks like is that it might be the pupa of another insect. Now, I've seen upstairs, just outside this colony, an animal that might have left behind this other young. Aha, I thought I saw one of these. This is the Adonis blue butterfly, and this is their food plant, the horseshoe vetch. And their caterpillars are very picky, so the adult butterflies, they fly in and they look for this plant here to lay their eggs on. Now their caterpillars eat the leaves and then they secrete a special honey-like substance that the ants really love. And so the ants will collect them up and sometimes will even bring them back into their colonies and look after them. Which is great for the butterfly because it means that the caterpillars don't have to worry so much about being eaten by things because they have the ant colony to protect them. Now over here we've got our farmers, and these are kind of like the forager ants. So a lot of ants, they'll have foragers that go out into the world and they'll collect up seeds and bits of plants, sometimes other insects even, and they'll bring them back to the colony to feed to the young ants. And that's what our farmers do, of course. They're out here working in their fields, but then they bring the food back inside to share with the rest of the colony. So back down inside the colony, we've got one of these storage rooms, and here's a worker ant coming in, storing all the food. So they've got these special granary chambers inside the anthill, and this is where they keep all of their seeds as food for later. Sometimes the ants will mash them up with their mouths, they'll kind of chew them up before storing them, but sometimes they'll actually have special indoor gardens, and we can see one of them inside this colony here. So down here in this chamber, we've got a little mushroom garden, and this is something that several different ant species do. Is they'll bring back leaves or those mushed up seeds, and they'll actually grow fungus on them. So here we've got some mushrooms growing on their mycelium, and they're eating the stored up plants here. And what the ants do is they actually farm these mushrooms, this fungus, and the fungus is what they eat, which is quite clever. So they do some indoor underground gardening. Now this isn't the only kind of farming that ants do. Here we can see them growing kind of almost like a vegetable crop, but ants also can keep livestock, they can keep other animals. Now up here on this plant, we've got a few more workers, and these are shepherds, and they've got their sheep here. Now in real life, ants, of course, they don't keep sheep exactly, but instead what they will do is they'll look after these insects here. So this is an aphid, and an aphid is a kind of a bug, and they've got this needle-like mouth that they poke into plants to drink the sap, and that's where they get their food. But of course, aphids eat, that means they have to go to the bathroom, and when they go to the bathroom, their poop is actually something called honeydew. So they actually secrete the extra sugar that they can't digest fast enough, and the ants love this stuff because it's great, full of sugar for them to eat. So they'll actually take care of the aphids, they protect them from predators, and they might move them around even from plant to plant. So if this plant here starts to die because it's gotten too old, or maybe there's too many aphids on it, they'll actually pick up the aphids and move them to other plants so that the aphids can get more food and the ants can get more of the aphids' honeydew, which is pretty amazing, I think. So they actually will herd and breed these aphids, just like our villagers here take care of the sheep. Now, it's dangerous being a forager ant. You're out in the open where predators can come find you. And so one of the things that the colony will do is they have older ants go out to be the foragers. So in a worker ant's life, they might start life as a nurse ant, and then as they get a bit older, they might get reassigned. They might get a different job. They get sent out to be a forager. And that's because it's more dangerous. And so they send out these older ants because they've done lots of work inside the colony already. They might be starting to get a little bit tired, and so it's kind of okay if they get a bit eaten. But of course, the colony doesn't really want the forager ants to be eaten, and so they've got other special workers. They've got these here. They've got soldier ants that protect the colony. And just like iron golems, much bigger than villagers, soldier ants are usually much bigger than the other worker ants. That's how you can tell them apart. They're also, just like the golems are equipped with these big strong arms, soldier ants are often equipped with really strong jaws, big mandibles, so they can deliver a good bite. But ants have other defense mechanisms. Unlike the golems, ants also make something called formic acid. Now, this is a kind of acid, and so it stings other animals. And ants often can have a sting. But a few ants, they also have the ability to spray the acid from their behinds. And this helps them against bigger predators, things like birds that might come down that, it's harder for the ants to bite them. So they can actually spray the acid out to help scare away the predators. If a worker gets attacked, of course, just like an ant colony, the soldiers will rush into the defense, and the workers get back inside the colony, and just like the villagers do, they will ring that bell, and that frightens all the other ants, and they'll come back down inside the colony while the soldiers rush to defend the colony against the pillagers. So down here in the deepest parts of the colonies, we can see another really important job. Here we've got a cleaner ant, or cleaner worker, and what they're doing is they bring dead ants and they dispose of them in these kind of garbage rooms where they store all kinds of rotting stuff. So sick or dead ants get brought down here, other waste and garbage, so food maybe that's going off. they'll bring it down here and store them in these rooms to keep it away from the rest of the colony, and that keeps the rest of the colony a bit cleaner so that the other ants don't get sick. So up here we can see why it's so important that these sick ants don't stay in the colony. Here we've got another worker ant, and we can see that something very strange has happened to this ant. It's got a mushroom coming out of its head. Now, this is a sign that this ant was infected with this fungus called the cordyceps. And what this fungus can actually do is it can actually take control of this ant. And what it does is it makes the ant climb up to a really high up spot, and then it grabs on really tight, and then the ant dies. And what happens is the fungus inside the ant's body, it uses the nutrients inside the ant's body to grow this kind of like a mushroom. And it wants to be way up high so that when it releases its spores, those spores get spread out far and wide, and hopefully it'll land on some of these other worker ants and infect them. So that's why sick ants are usually brought by the other ants to somewhere far away from the colony, either really deep down so that any infection stays deepest in the colony and doesn't infect the rest of it, or ants will sometimes have spots that are away from the colony where they can take dead or dying ants and dispose of them there, and that's to help keep them from spreading any sicknesses like this cordyceps fungus. So there we have it. This is our anthill village. Now, how did I build this anthill village? First way, of course, is you can just dig it out underground. But what I did is I built the whole thing at once. So here we've got what the ant colony looks like, and I built it out of wool so I could see what the whole thing would look like, see how the chambers are all differently arranged. Up here we've got the different entrances, and ant colonies usually have multiple entrances, so that's what I've done here. Our ant colony has 2 different entrances, and you can see that the stairs in the corridors, I've actually made them 2 wide, 2 blocks wide, and that's because ants will often do that. They want to be able to have 2 ants get past each other without blocking things up, otherwise they'd have traffic jams all over the place, because our colony only has maybe 20-30 ants, but a real ant colony can have thousands of ants. They don't want any traffic jams anywhere. This really big chamber here is the chamber where the queen lived, and way down at the bottom we've got those garbage disposal rooms so that the any diseases stay well far away from the rest of the colony, especially the rooms where the larvae and the pupae are, because they are much more delicate. They can't protect themselves as well. So once I had the rough shape of the ant colony, what I did is I used a structure block, this one here. So I saved the ant colony. So once I had the shape of my ant colony, I used a structure block to save the ant colony. And then I put down another structure block and pasted the colony back down into the ground. So now that the colony is pasted, I use the fill command to fill the empty spaces with soil. So I'm going to fill the area with dirt, and I'm replacing air. Once I've done that, I don't want to have to dig out all of this wool. So again, what I do is I use the fill command to this time fill the space with air, and I'm replacing wool. And now I have my ant colony pasted in under the ground. I just need to decorate and add lighting so that it's not too dark. So that was a quick tour around my villager ant colony. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I hope you have a go building one of these yourselves.